Disclaimer. I've been meaning to work on and get out a bunch of project videos for a while, but I've been out of commission for a hot minute. Allergy season has been kicking my ass. and some other stuff's been getting my way. But yeah. Hi, yes, video. I make videos, theoretically. Anyways, go. Proceed. So, mostly, just because I want to keep talking about being a dick and, how great it is and everything, I'm going to talk about the approach to romance writing, which is something that I can put in more concrete terms. You have to understand, right? You have to take a step back and think about this. That goofy sexual content visual novel dating sims are basically, it's just asking for people to shit on you and not take it seriously, right? There's automatically a heavy bias against actually thinking of a game like this as being legitimately good or having solid writing. It's like, okay, look at something like Honey Pop, right? Has really great writing, really great character writing, comedy writing. Nobody takes it seriously since that bias is that prevalent, right? That just goes to show how overwhelmingly rad being a dick is, that it can be in one of the least respected genres of all media, and still an overwhelming majority of the people that play it end up loving it and respecting it. Now, I've said before that the romance elements in being a dick are not my favorite aspect of the narrative, but even just enjoying the game's events and sense of humor, the romantic elements add layers of emotional connection and motivation to Tremolo, the protagonist, so I do appreciate that they exist regardless. In fact, I think being a dick is on the pretty good side when it comes to writing compelling romance. I remember years ago when romance was more like a slightly more prolific genre. I guess I recall a lot of video essays in the early 2010s about, writing good romance, probably around the times when Toradora or other anime like that were coming out, or maybe in mainstream Western media. I feel like the modern popular equivalents aren't quite the same, Like, in anime space, you have stuff like, Nagatoro, Dress Up Darling, and such, that aren't really romances in the sense that we're watching a couple grow closer in a mature romantic context. It's more like cutesy fodder, where the romantic connection is kind of taken as a given and just as a pretense for, cute scenes. And some of them do it better than others, obviously, but it's not about, watching people engage in a complex emotions and actually talk about realistic romance, right? Being a dick is a more purposeful kind of classic romance where the core conflict is watching two mature adults deal with the hurdles of romance, communication, uncertainty, availability, etc. Well, maybe they aren't the most mature adults, but whatever. The most basic aspect that makes being a dick's romance work, the same thing that makes the rest of it work, it's charm. The characters are likable and relatable. That's kind of the first thing you gotta check off. The character interactions have a lot of energy. Personalities are vibrant and they bounce off of each other in fun ways that are unique between different pairings. Beyond that, the characters are all very human. They bring the astronomical highs of the absurdity of the story back down to earth a lot of the time. The characters all have their own stuff going on, and they all feel like members of a coherent world, not agents with a specific purpose and a plot. The story is also very consistent at breaking down expected stereotypes. So all the cast have unexpected but believable and relatable sides to them. Details, nuances. They all show a wide range of emotions as well. They're dynamic and they respond to different situations with different personas, different aspects of their personality. All of this is basic character writing elements that just makes characters more fun to watch in general, regardless of the genre. So, in a good romance, as all the people I recall those years ago, whispering in my ear in those fucking video essays said, you want both parties to feel like they have their own shit going on, they have their own lives, like they are complete characters not defined by their relationship to another character. That's, of course, an easy hurdle to clear. Relatively speaking, all of the characters in being a dick are self-motivated. Even side characters that only show up here and there for a second function on their own internal consistent logic with their own goals. They all function without being included in a romance. They'd still be meaningful characters who do make sense as their own people. In fact, let me think of what each of the main girls' career ambitions are off the top of my head in being a dick. I know Maya wants a career in social work, probably with a minor in film studies, if she has the credits. She's also well researched and well versed in field experiments and resume dressing and such. So she's clearly given her career path more thought than simply just what major she wants to go for, but probably not to the point that she has an idea of what job she specifically wants to land. Josie, let's see, she's attending Bergmeister and Royst because of her family history ties to the university. She's planning to get a business degree like her dad did before her. Josie is probably a bit more interested in the college experience than Maya is, so she doesn't talk about her career aspirations as much. And based off of some of her other conversations with, like, Jill, she's not necessarily as set in stone in what she wants to learn from her classes. She's planning to take some sort of financial planning, general economics in the next semester based on other people's recommendations. Josie wasn't expecting to make it into college in the first place, and she also seems somewhat flaky, like one of those, cheerful and sunny on the outside people, kind of depressed and unmotivated on the inside, so she probably isn't planning that far into the future in the first place. I believe she was planning to move away somewhere before she got the news that she actually was accepted into BNR, but I don't remember if she said what she was planning to do once she left. It was more that she kind of just wanted to get away from her current environment that was putting her in a negative headspace, a generic or a generalized fresh start without a clear, coherent plan. I hate to say this, but I don't think I remember what Sage is majoring in. I remember that she was working on her thesis in one of the scenes, but I can't recall what it was about. I think it was also to do with microeconomics. Her parents are rich assholes. I'd imagine that she's majoring in something along the lines of whatever Toboltz is doing. Probably business, economics shit, I don't know if I can think of any clear career aspirations or plans in the future that Sage has talked about other than, like, vague personal ambitions, she has a conversation talking about paying things forward, other nebulous stuff like that. It's funny because Sage is the closest to graduating out of everyone in the cast, but she talks the least about her post-college plans. I suppose a lot of that might be deliberate on the story's part. They didn't want to reveal who Sage's parents are until there's a twist in the narrative, but Jill is in the same boat. There's like a very clear career-minded girl with a path in finance. I'm not sure if she has additional career aspirations. She's probably the type that hasn't really thought about other options before, but might seriously consider other career paths if prompted. Like she would be open to other interests. A lot of her friends travel around the world. I know that. She likes being at her family's home's horse stable. She doesn't exactly relish her personal lifestyle, so financial success and reliability is probably not a big priority for her. Bella obviously already has a career with no plans to change it in the future. Honestly, if I were to judge it on these metrics, I think Bella is the character with the least going on in her life outside of her interactions with the plot. I mean, part of that is obviously by design. Bella is an extremely antisocial, kind of set-in-her-ways woman, and it seems like she only has one or two friends, and she just kind of does her daily routine, goes to work, comes home, lives in a big empty house. Part of her flaws as a character is her lack of drive to pursue anything more outside of, she feels kind of trapped by an obligation. Or, more than anything, our main character, Tremolo, not his literal real name, but Tremolo is a very well-rounded, self-motivated entity. He's got a really great balance of having personality elements you control and having clearly defined character to him that you can't change. He's a handyman. His dad never went to college, so he has less of an idea of what a career path through college even looks like. He's interested in technical fields, and he wants to get a degree in some sort of physical science. And, of course, the game is filled with an introspective dive into Tremolo's journey into adulthood, his self-discovery, his motivations and ambitions, and so on. I think Tremolo is probably the character most motivated by romance in the story, since Tremolo takes after his dad a lot and has a connective curiosity with a mom he never got to meet in his life. He agrees with his mom's decision that he's aware of to run away from her disapproving household to marry his dad. And Tremolo often reinforces himself with his dad's, his dad's idealistic kind of mentality, and his dad's advice to pursue not let love slip away and such like that. Of course, having not been very popular most of his life, being raised by a single dad, Tremolo is notably inexperienced when it comes to romance. He hasn't grown up in a very gendered environment, and sometimes makes social errors on the basis of not knowing how to interact with women differently from how he would interact with men. He's very much exploring the concept of romance somewhat blindly, but knowingly, passionately, he believes in it as a strong motivation, despite the fact that ironically, this actually leads to the romantic storytelling of the game being really compelling at times, because the characters get to have these interesting conversations about romance and dating etiquette and stuff. Like Tremolo's romantic pursuits in the story make perfect sense. It's clear with how much of a romantic person he is. Without experience or without etiquette, he'd naturally develop feelings for a lot of different people as he starts to connect with each of them. He's the sort of person that would run into these issues of not being able to narrow down his feelings or decide what he wants, which is a big conflict of his character. He's a very self-discovery minded character, and obviously the story is very coming of age, self-discovery-esque. He's growing out of his shell and trying to find a balance and decide who he is. So the characters are all great. Tremolo especially is a great protagonist. It helps the romance by the fact that so much of the story is not focused on it. Most of the game is just about Tremolo and Derek's goofy fucking college hijink adventures. This is what does the most to make the romance not feel contrived, or like the characters' lives all revolve around some overdramatic bullshit, right? Instead, it is very date-heavy. It's very communication-heavy. It has a ton of making the characters likable and having fun and developing a connection. It doesn't dive into boring, whiny soap opera shit. It doesn't rely on obnoxious miscommunications and tropes to drag shit out, or obnoxious fucking time-wasting tension. Some people have criticized the story because it's not very heavy. It's not super dramatic. But I not only just love the fact that how upbeat the game is in its hijinks and the unbridled optimism of the story. I feel like that's a very intentional choice. And I wouldn't mind if the whole game was just upbeat shit for the whole thing. I really don't like when stories rush dramatic shit before earning it. So I really appreciate the gradual build-up to making you love all of the characters, just with hints of drama here and there. I'm already pretty familiar with Pinkcake's writing style, and I know that it will eventually get more dramatic and more dark as the story goes on. So that's why I appreciate the slow burn on getting to that point. So yeah, getting back into it, Tremolo, being a great protagonist, helps the romance a lot because it becomes natural. It's not like a blank canvas, like dating an actual character. Tremolo himself is likable enough that you can totally understand what other people would see in him. You want to see him together with other people. Tremolo is the fucking, the best boy. I would date him. He's just so fucking great. He's the coolest guy ever. He's wholesomely cute. He's a rad Giga Chad. He's a down-to-earth, normal, the passive aggressively complains about the wacky shit he has to put up with, but he's like a super sweetheart, open-minded, himbo, dorky loser, just the whole package. He's a totally relatable, likable guy. Imagine the straight man energy of Hajime from Danganronpa 2, but in a guy halfway between being a normal person who sees the flaws in everything around him, and a guy who also appreciates the chaos of youth and is more willing to do stupid stuff for the sake of just having fun memories and engaging socially with his friends, trying to live his best life, figuring stuff out. He's equal parts like relatable introspection and like concern and questioning what is or is not the right path, but also Chad like willingness to be bold and just make choices, like deal with the consequences later. One thing I noticed recently about the romance writing in this game is how each of the main routes feels fundamentally different. Like, a different tone, like a different kind of romance. I guess I'll even include Quinn in this point, even though she's supposedly not one of the main routes. With Tremolo and Jill, the romance is very adult. It's very mature. It's very heavy. They see each other as like a true love interest, and they take their relationship very seriously. Jill is the most sexually reserved of the cast and puts the most thought into the social implications of their relationship and how it fits into her life and her peer group. Like, she's the only character that's brought Tremolo around to have dinner with her close friends outside of their college environment at this point in the story. This is obviously the type of romance that would probably lead to a marriage, not too far down the line. It's very much a relationship that emulates his parents, right? Like a poor boy and a rich girl trying to be together despite the external conflict that creates. Jill is kind of overly proper or overly, has trouble speaking her mind, so it's important for her to feel really safe and comfortable amongst close friends or significant others so that she can feel more at ease being honest with her thoughts and feelings. Another thing that works really well with Jill's relationship is something that's just generally well done with her character, and that's having the trope of a really sweet, kind-hearted, generous, innocent type girl who still has a human level of cynicism and suspicion. Jill likes following platitudes and believing in romantic concepts and morals, but she isn't strictly naive. Maybe more naive than other characters, but not naive to an inhuman degree. She understands when people are trying to take advantage of her or do bad things, but she, tries to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. She puts in an effort to frame things in a more polite way in her mind. She can be a little sassy and sarcastic from time to time. She understands more cynical points of view and more debaucherous concepts. She just simply chooses not to engage with them very much. So she never feels like an unrealistically sweet, innocent character, but we can see in her relationship how her sweethearted instincts are more prominent depending on the company that she keeps. Like, she becomes more juvenile and excitable in her optimism, She's very much like the Haru of the game, where she's both more mature and less mature than the rest of the cast. She's the oldest and has the most adult life experience, but she also has some of the most childlike, innocent tendencies. Well, I guess one could argue that Quinn or Riona or something have the most adult life experiences, since they've had to grow up with little adult supervision and struggling in poverty situations. But anyways, there's a really interesting dynamic with Jill's own warped perception of familial and romantic love due to her never particularly relating very much with her distant, rich parents, Sometimes she approaches romantic love and platonic love with elements of familial love. Like, there's this one scene where she's taking care of Tremolo after he was beaten up by Chad, and she behaves in a very maternal way, to the point that many in Tremolo might find it somewhat creepy, or like she's overstepping her relationship bounds by almost treating Tremolo like a child to coddle and such. She probably doesn't have a lot of experience teaching herself the separation between those kinds of behaviors and interactions, which is an interesting element of her romantic relationships. With Tremolo and Sage, the relationship feels very much like two close friends who get each other's humor and can speak very frankly with one another. They have excellent and very clear communication and don't feel the need to present themselves in a particular way for one another. They don't feel particularly embarrassed or like it is overly serious to discuss their relationship. As such, they're probably the most stable couple of the group, since they just get along and they don't have strong, naive expectations or assumptions. They're very open about sex. They're very lax about boundaries. They have fun doing mundane stuff together and are more willing to vent with each other and be at their worst with each other. You know, they're not trying to pump themselves up and present themselves in a certain way. So yeah. With Tremolo and Maya, this is probably actually the most difficult to pin down. I feel that most people would agree that Maya is the hardest character to sum up. Like, she's really complex, but she's complex in a way where it's not easy to get, like, the clearest picture of what she's about, since you can't necessarily ascribe her to, like a character archetype that you're more familiar with. You know, like the other characters can sort of be ascribed in certain ways. Being a DIK's creator, Pink Cake, is a big fan of Dan Harmon, and especially Dan Harmon's work on Community. He takes a lot of inspiration from Harmon's style. The closest feeling direct character comparison for Maya would probably be Britta from Community. They're very similar characters. They're kind of cool in the present, but not really. They're not very popular. They're both fairly aggressive feminists who are very, like, have strong opinions about things, who still have an ironic sense of humor about things. Like, they're kind of buzzkills. They both expect a bit too much from other people and themselves. But I'd say that Maya's a bit more chill and probably a bit more likable. You know, like, Maya is more likely to create conflict by taking things too personally and, like, generating conflict with others, but she's less off-putting to the people around her. You know, like, she often thinks there's more conflict than there is. If I were to describe the nature of their romance, I think Tremolo and Maya as a couple are an example of people discovering themselves through their relationship. Like, inherently, I think Tremolo is not the best fit for Jill, for instance, because Tremolo basically has to kind of lie and keep things from Jill, such as their involvement in almost destroying her piano when they crashed the frat party. And I think that Jill wants a relationship with someone who is sure of who they are and what they want, and that is probably not Tremolo. With Maya, I think both characters are understandably, like, just fumbling around in the dark, exploring their respective romances, with both of them being unsure of their feelings and how to go about it. Maya is very unsure of a lot of things. She's exploring her sexuality, her sense of self, her moral positions, grasping with her inhibitions and her biases, you know? And I think that's what it is about, you know? Two friends who like each other and don't know themselves all that well, exploring a strange, confusing, and scary but exciting whirlwind of feelings for each other and with each other. Maya is also probably the most anxious about things not going well. Like, she's had bad experiences with close relationships. She's afraid of betrayal, persecution, judgment, etc. She has an attitude and is naturally kind of judgmental and accidentally says a lot of stuff she tries not to say. She's very much a character that tries to, like, she's very much like the Diane from BoJack Horseman as well. She's kind of morally egotistical and tries to be a good person all the time, but isn't always right. And it's a little bit stuck in her mind, and some moral grandstandings, and you know, the fact that she has high standards is a reason why she's really hard on herself, and she doesn't like herself very much. It's difficult for her to think of a relationship identity as an us because of her, she's unsure of herself as an individual, and she's not she doesn't have great, like, self-esteem, I guess. With Tremolo and Josie, I think it's best summed up by that one Josie-themed song that played in episode 8, Easy to Love, where Tremolo and Josie are generally just kind of charismatic, likable people. They naturally just get along very easily. They have a mostly unobstructed romance. It's very natural for them to date, you know, and connect in the ways that dating people just do. Every question that they would have is an easy yes, you know, they get along well. Logically, they would make a good couple. They're easily attracted to each other. It's the most, like, natural relationship that would form. Their personalities make romance a natural conclusion because they're both pretty romantic, easygoing people. I mean, it's not entirely accurate. Josie is much like a cheerful and optimistic on the outside, kind of anxious on the inside kind of person, like a lot of depressed people are. It's not that she's necessarily faking her outgoing, fun-loving personality, but it's very much something that she tries to do. You know, she intentionally puts in a lot of energy and tries to be friendly and happy tries to not let her problems show externally. If they were to have problems, Josie probably would not be the best at handling them or communicating them, since she's kind of conflict averse. She gets anxious in stressful situations, and she wants to avoid fights and arguments and such. With Tremolo and Bella, it's all about chemistry, purely. Logically, they probably shouldn't date. It's not something either of them probably should pursue as individuals, but they just have magnetic chemistry. They just naturally keep thinking about each other and becoming more attracted to each other regardless of their own will. This is probably the only romance story I've ever seen where the excuse for, like, a lot of stories will have, like, an excuse for people liking each other where they're like, they just can't help it. They're just so attracted to each other. They just have so much chemistry or whatever. But in this circumstance, this is one of the few instances where I actually can believe it. Like, I actually agree with it, which is funny because their personalities also clash in a lot of ways. They simultaneously have a ton of chemistry and natural attraction to each other, and also they're really awkward together and have trouble talking. They don't understand each other's sense of humor and stuff. It's a really interesting way that the writing pulls this off while still making them feel organic, you know? The stark difference in each relationship Tremolo has also lends to having different feels Tremolo's role in the relationship. Like with Bella, Tremolo is definitely the party that's taking the most control of the relationship. He's pushing for greater intimacy. He's driving the situations. Whereas with someone like Sage, Tremolo is a bit more passive in that relationship and tries to express his relationship needs to his partner, who generally takes more control and does more suggesting of things. With Quinn, it's classic, like, emotionally reserved, unsentimental tsundere type, you know? But still a really solid and very cute, very well-done version of that trapping. The other side characters are probably more difficult to define in terms of the romantic interest to Tremolo due to lack of as much evidence. Like, characters like Sarah and Mel probably only have surface-level sexual interest. Lily might have a more defined interest. Riona is adorable. She also thinks Derek is funny, so she's automatically better than all those other heretics that don't like Derek. But she also probably doesn't have a unique romantic interest in Tremolo. A lot of them are just people that Tremolo, like Tremolo would be friends with, who also have low sexual inhibitions and, you know, in the college environment are very much open to sexual exploration. And yeah, each character has their own separate relationship with attraction and sex as well. Characters like Sage and Bella are very sex-driven. Sage is consciously sex-driven. She has, she's very explicit about her sexual needs. Bella is more, tries to control herself most of the time, but is, you know, subconsciously sexually attracted, which drives her to pursue the relationship. Whereas, for instance, like the Jill route has literally just one sexual encounter across like a 40-something hour story so far on her route. She's very reserved and is only very partly motivated by sex compared to all the other relationships, but keeps it to herself most of the time. Maya is probably one of the more interesting characters with her relationship with sex, not just because of the obvious conflict of her exploring her sexuality and whether or not she is bisexual or what her attraction is or anything like that. She has an interesting conflict of breaking out of her shell. Not just her shell, but her preconceptions about others. Her instinct to look down on more sexually outgoing people. You know, she kind of, in the same way as Britta, right? Like in Community, where Britta was very critical of any women that would be sexually outgoing or confident. You know, like she's very biased in her attempts to become more bold. You know, motivated by a desire to adapt to her partner and a desire to explore her own relationship with sex. It's also nice in a romance story to see a bunch of other couples besides the protagonist in relationships. There are a ton of other characters that are in relationships that evolve and change and have their own conflicts and stuff going on that you kind of get little glimpses at. And it's interesting to study their perception of romance as well from the outside. It helps to have a well-rounded world with all sorts of different characters that are more or less interested in romance at all. So, yeah, game is really good. It's really good. If you like Community, you'll like this. You know, think of Community, But instead of having annoying-ass, unproductive sexual tension dragged out over multiple seasons, it has actual romance writing. So yeah, play it, fuckwads. Also, of course, I can't talk about romance and being a dick without paying adequate tribute to the true romantic spectacle on full display. The pure, unfiltered, magical bromance.